Greetings, folks. Greetings, greetings, greetings. Good day, good afternoon, good morning. I'm going to say good morning here because it is actually the morning. It's 1 in the morning, very early here. So I'm going to try to keep it quiet while the family is still sleeping. So today's video basically is going to be a response to that question of the week I made last week on Monday. And basically in that video I asked you, for those of you who study several different languages, I asked you what approach did you take for your first language, and did that approach work with the other languages you started learning? And also, how effective was this approach to keep you persistent in your studies? Also, did you have to change some things up, like in the future? Were there something that you had to change with your strategy of learning your languages? So that was the question, and here's my response. So basically, for me, I'm going to go way back to my beginning stages of learning. My first serious language was Chinese. I took Spanish and French in school, but we all know how that goes. So I don't want to count those because those weren't languages that I studied seriously. Those were languages that I was basically forced to take. But Chinese was the first serious language I started learning. And the type of approach I took, I would say it was more of a natural approach. Now, mind you, I was just like any average language learner. I didn't have a method. I didn't have a strategy on how to go about doing this and that. And also, I didn't know about these forums that you can go to get advice and whatnot. I was just basically, I don't know, just motivated and had ambition, very ambitious for learning Chinese. So I basically went to the bookstore, got dictionary, phrase book, and I just got started. Just learning phrases, writing stuff down, making some sentences. And then once I met with native speakers, then if they would say something to me I didn't understand, I would ask them and I would write it down. I'll ask them some questions. So I kept a notepad with me. I basically carried that notepad everywhere. And at times when I had to bring it out to write stuff down, that's what I would do. And I would go back home and study from it, and then go back out the next day, do the same thing. And I just kept doing this, and it was like a snowball effect. You know, within 6 months of doing that, I became conversational in Chinese. But like I said, I was doing this every day and all day. I just got crazy with it. But the approach I took, well, I don't want to say method, but the type of approach I took was just get out there, just learn stuff, get out there, use it with native speakers. And this is a approach that I'm still taking to this day. I've added some new stuff to this approach, but the original approach is still there. I don't do too much grammar. I wait a certain period to do grammar. Now, when I started Chinese, I wasn't even thinking about grammar, because grammar, when I thought of grammar, I thought of technical stuff. And I didn't even know English grammar at the time. I didn't know about conjunctions, adverbs, and pronouns. I knew what a noun was because it was used so often in school. Noun, person, place, or thing. I heard that very often. But this other stuff, conjunctions, adverbs, conjugations, and all that stuff, I didn't know what that stuff was. So I just totally ignored it, and then just started, just jumped in and just started making sentences. I want to keep track of my time. So that's what I did. I just got out there. I just used those phrases, and I just kept doing it every day. And that's what brought me to the point of being conversational. Now, what made this most effective for me is the fact that I was meeting native speakers very often, and they were always willing to help me. I mean, I've even gotten so many emails. A lot of Chinese people gave me their emails. Said, oh, let's exchange email. We can practice sometime. But I had so many emails that I couldn't even contact all these people. I had a list of emails. And half those people I never even talked to again. That's how many Chinese people were around. And that was very effective for me because it kept me motivated to see people willing to help me go through this struggle of learning this new language. it just kept me more motivated. It just wanted me to learn. Okay, so it made me want to learn more and push harder. So at the end of the day, when it was time to go home, I didn't even go to sleep. I just went back home and just, you know, pulled out my notepad, my phrase book, and said, okay, yeah, tomorrow I'm going to use this and use that, use this. And I was doing that every day. So I think that's what made it more effective and kept me persistent, is the fact of just getting out there and meeting with these natives. You know, and a lot of times these natives, they don't, if you're making mistakes and your tones aren't right, if they can understand you, then they'll still commend you. You know, they'll praise you and say, wow, that's awesome, you're really good. You know, you suck, you actually suck, but they're telling you that you're good, because they want you to continue. They encouraging you to continue learning their language. So, you know, that was very encouraging itself, and that's what also kept me going. So this is the importance for me, for my approach. I know everyone is different, but for me at the time, that's what kept my motivation high, and I'm still doing it today. I'm leveling up, is what we will call it. So that's that. And what else? The changes. I wouldn't say that I changed anything. I will say that there were some add-ons. For example, the input, the listening. The listening was something that I really didn't put a strong emphasis on at the beginning stages of my language journey. I didn't really care. I didn't want to sit down and listen to audio. I just didn't really think about doing that. For Chinese, I was actually working from a pronunciation key. They had, for example, if you guys are familiar with the pinyin, at the bottom of this book, they had like TS for T, they had ZH for sorry. They had the C equals TS, T sound, and then they had the J, the ZH equals J, J. I just went with that, and I just practiced the pronunciation when I was meeting with the native speakers, you know, leveling up. And that's just, you know, and like I said, when you practice with natives, if they don't understand it, like, what are you trying to say? Then you're gonna work you're gonna work harder to try to enunciate the word more accurately, and that's what I was doing. And they always said that my pronunciation is really good, but I know my tones were off. My tones weren't really good, because I even had a Chinese friend who told me often that he said, man, you gotta work on your tones, man. He said, when you speak Chinese, you don't speak with the tones. You just speak like it's like a flat tone. He said, you gotta work on that. But I was stubborn. I was a stubborn kid. I was trying to hear that, because in my mind, I'm like, well, from my experiences, from speaking with all these Chinese people, they understood me. So what's the point, you know? So I wasn't really trying to hear what he was trying to say, but he was actually trying to help me. And he was right, but I was stubborn at the time. I was content where I was, because the Chinese people could understand me perfectly. So, so yeah, that's the thing that I added on these days, is just listening more to the language, getting used to the you know, the pronunciation, how to enunciate certain letters, words, and then the accent. Just being more aware of those things. That's how I am now. This is something that's new. So I don't want to say I changed up my method. This is something that I added, because the method that I used before, or approach, I'm still taking that now, and it still works. Now, before I end the video, I want to talk a little bit more about the grammar stuff. Now, for me, when it comes to grammar, I really do enjoy it. And I started to enjoy grammar after I got into Japanese heavily, because Japanese is a very it's a very it has a lot of grammar, a lot of constructions, and all these different things you put together. And after learning a lot of that stuff, I said, wow, this is pretty, you know, this is pretty fun. I like doing this. And at that time is when I really start to enjoy learning grammar. But my philosophy is this: if you're starting on a language that is totally different than your own, you have no experience learning another language with a similar grammatical structure, then you shouldn't focus too much on the grammar. Okay, because it's going to cause stress. You're not going to be familiar with a lot of things, and you don't want to be stressed. That's the worst thing, is being stressed out. Give me just a second. That's the worst thing, is being stressed out. Once you get stressed out, you're definitely going to stop. And I can say this because it happened with me with Russian. Like Russian, I tried to, and I already had experience with Japanese. And like I told you, I started liking grammar after Japanese. So I tried, when I did Russian, I started when I worked at the gas station. I was meeting Russians, and I learned some phrases and stuff. And I said, you know what, I'm going to read a grammar book. I want to see how this grammar is. And I started with the grammar. It was so hard. Like, they had all these charts, and the grammar wasn't making sense to me because it was totally different. And I got really, really frustrated. And I said, man, I don't know if I want to learn this language anymore. And I literally stopped. I stopped learning Russian for a while. And then I ended up picking it back up. And I said, you know what, I'm going to just take this approach that I took before, with Chinese and Japanese. I did the same thing with Japanese. I took the same approach, just learn phrases and do the same thing, practice online. That's when I started really getting to practice in chat rooms. Use these sentences with native speakers. But Russian was my first Slavic language, and I was totally unfamiliar with these cases, this case system. It just didn't make sense to me, and it was discouraging, so I stopped. So, my philosophy is that if you don't have experience learning a language, like if you've never studied a Slavic language before and you're wanting to learn Russian, do not get into the grammar unless you're a linguist and wanting to understand a grammar for linguistic reasons. But if you're really trying to learn a language to speak it and to be able to communicate, I think it's going to be really tough learning grammar. I know everyone is different, but I'm just saying, like from my experience, if you want to avoid stress, then you might not want to take a grammatical approach with such language. Like for me, I like to spend at least 6 months. I'll spend at least 6 months on a language before I start getting into grammar, because by the time 6 months, at that time, I will have built up a lot of exposure with the language. So it will be good to just go ahead and start touching on grammar. But if it's a language that you study before, for instance, like I think I mentioned it before, Burmese. When I first started learning Burmese, I took a grammatical approach to that. Why? Because I studied Japanese. I understand Japanese grammar, so when I look at Burmese grammar, it makes sense right away. I mean, I was never confused by anything grammatical in Burmese because of my experience with Japanese, Korean. So I can start another SOV language grammatically, without any worries, because I'm going to be familiar with a lot of the structure already. So, but yeah, I'm going to wrap this video up. I think I covered everything. The approach I took when I first started learning, and how effective it was, why it was so effective, and changes, which I haven't really made any change. I just added some things on, which is the listening. But yeah, that is it for this video. I'm going to go ahead and cut it. Go ahead and go to sleep. And yeah, that's the question of the week. I will post. They took away the video response option, so what I'm gonna have to do is put the annotation to the video so you guys can go see it. It's just a question. I mean, I told you what I asked, but I'll still add it there. But anyway, that is it. Good night to you all. Have a good night, and thanks for viewing.